get, that's kind of too big a word. That's like mayonnaise. I'm assuming that's the biggest word I know.
Hello, everybody, and welcome on into, Chris, we really need like a name. We've got the Blitz. Derek's got the bat. I was toying around with it. We need a name. I feel like the band for college football props. I don't know. I'll need to talk with Derek Hardy because we don't want any trademark infringement upon his stuff. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome in for week 3 college football playoff props here, powered by Unabated. I'm Thomas Viola, and joining me as always here, the realist, Chris Kay. Chris, great to see you again. How is it going, my friend?
It's good. This is we're starting to get to a fun point in the season where we know just enough to be dangerous, and we're getting some really good matchups consistently, and entering conference play here shortly. So it's a fun time to watch college football for sure. And multiple midweek day games or midweek night games are great too. So it's a good time for college football.
Yeah, it really is. And does it make it easier on the prop projections here when we start getting into these fields where it's, okay, we're in conference play, we've seen usage for these guys. Like it's not quite like preseason in the NFL, obviously, but is it a lot easier now as we start to get into some conference games?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, we're guessing on a lot of, I shouldn't say we're guessing. We're making educated guesses on roles and those types of things going into week 1, week 2. The hard part, it's not like preseason, but it is in a sense because the data is just tough to be reliable without like consistently watching every snap. For these blowouts, right? Like Tennessee plays Kent State this weekend. They're like 45-point favorites. Like, what can we really gain about future usage for Tennessee players against Kent State if they win 55-10, right? Like, that's just not going to help us out. So seeing some of these conference matchups and these like Texas versus Michigan matchups, they really do help with just creating more confidence. And like, as we'll see this weekend, more teams will be released today than previous weeks. So it's good to see real games, real usage, real snaps. And so it's definitely easier to do at this point.
Shout out. Did you have anything on the bad beat last night in the 87-10 blowout?
That happened with Auburn in week 1. The same type of thing. They crushed Alabama A&M and they shortened the game. But I didn't even realize it's kind of like a rain out in baseball in the 8th inning. Yeah, I didn't realize that was the case, but that's a really bad beat. That's just tough.
It happened a couple years ago. Syracuse was playing Wagner, and they just said for the entire second half, they were like, let's just run the clock.
I mean, I don't blame Vegas for saying, hey, this shouldn't count, but it doesn't make it easier to swallow.
It's a tough beat, but at least you don't lose. At least you get your money back. Matt Locklear in the chat here saying happy Friday, guys. Happy Friday to you too as well, Matt. Shall we get into it and get embarking on our prop journey here? And before we do that, just want to remind you guys real quick, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, turn on notifications, the whole jam. Don't miss a minute of any of the shows that we've got going on. We've got Derek Hardy coming up after this to talk NFL week 2 props. But right now, we're going to start getting into some of the lines that we're looking at, and then we'll take some of your questions as well here. So be sure to throw those in the chat, and we will get to you guys. This is an interactive show. We want you to be a part of it. So please throw your questions in for us. We will talk about them as well here. But right now, Chris, let's fire up the Unabated prop screen and talk to me about where we want to go first here.
Yeah, tonight's games are great. UNLV, Kansas, Arizona, Kansas State. I mean, these are some fun matchups with some really awesome offenses.
Is UNLV actually good enough to compete with Kansas here?
I think so. I mean, years ago, Kansas was just not, was the joke of the conference, right? The Big 12. And now UNLV, I think they had 10 wins last year. And their quarterback, Matthew Sluka, let's start there with the UNLV passing yards. So Matthew Sluka, he's a transfer from Holy Cross. I think we've talked about him recently because we did UNLV a couple weeks back. He won the job battling out one other transfer and a returnee. And he's looked really good. His numbers might not be super impressive, but that's just a little bit because UNLV's been in extreme control in the first 2 weeks. They beat Houston, and then they beat an FCS team. I think it was Utah Tech. I like the over on the passing yards tonight against Kansas. They have a really good receiver one. They have a great slot guy in DeJesus. So he has options, and I think they're going to need to score to keep up with Kansas, and which is what you need, I think, for Sluka to hit that pass yards. It's only a $1.69. Like that is a really low number on this one book here. So I like the over. I think it'll be a super competitive game. Yeah, it would be fun to see him and how he performs against maybe his toughest matchup of the year.
Yeah, I'm looking around the screen here. That's going to be over at 4 wins that they're offering 169. Parks also offering 169. So if you are one of our friends on the East Coast here, by far and away, those are the numbers to go bet. You are getting almost 10 yards versus the FanDuel line here that's at 175. BetOnline's got 174. Still seeing a decent edge on all of those prices, but yeah, by far and away, 4 wins in Parks are going to be where you want to go if you have the opportunity to bet there. As sports videos, just throwing some footballs in, and Brett Pagney says, "Chris, how's it going?"
That's good. Good to see you, Brett.
I do completely agree with you, and that line feels very, very low for a college game that feels like it's going to have to air it out here.
Yeah, I think the projected implied total is 24 to 33 type number. I could see that going over, and we haven't really seen the full amount of Sluka at UNLV. He's played well. He played at, like I said, Holy Cross FCS FCS school that where he really was a run first guy. But he had good games against Buffalo and Boston College in the previous 2 years. So varying levels of FBS matchups. I think if you would have said, hey, that number's 201, 210. I mean, I'd probably just not even worry about it. But 169, even mid 170s feels a little bit disrespectful for the Holy Cross transfer.
Yeah, that certainly seems pretty aggressive there. I agree with you, especially given the 201 projection that we have for it. We've got a couple questions in the chat here, so real quick we'll get to those. We're going to be talking about Jacob DeZeus and Daniel Hishaw, right?
Daniel Hishaw, yeah. So if we want to move to receivers, we can talk Sluka's receiving options.
That sounds great.
DeJesus is that kind of smaller slot guy type, whereas Ricky White's kind of he's a big play guy, but really just a dynamic weapon, period. I think we actually like his Ricky White's under and DeJesus is under a little bit. White is the pure alpha one. He's going to see probably 10 targets. It's just, if you think about it, right, 78 yards is half of that number essentially. For what they're projecting Sluka to get. That's just a really high percentage. I don't absolutely love this one, especially because you're rooting for Sluka to go over. Yeah. But I think if you're going to pick just one and you like Ricky White's under, I don't hate that one at all. That's a big number. That's a number you typically see with all the big receiver ones in college football, and typically those guys are seeing quarterbacks with 250 to 300 yards as their prop. So it's a pretty significant percentage there.
Yeah, so we've got some negative correlation here to the point where you might want to choose one or the other on these. How would you attack this?
I think I would just choose the one that you like the most and just go that way. If you're playing on Underdog or Prize Picks and you wanted to get a little tricky, a little fancy, you could do that. Like if you did last night, something that I liked was Joey. They had one of these tricky tight ends out of nowhere popped up for Texas State. I bet his under with Jordan McLeod's over, and it got me a really good percentage payout increase, but it's a little bit different because it's a tight end I suspect is going to see 1, maybe 2 targets. So a little bit different. So I think I would just go with one and stay that way. I wouldn't necessarily do both tonight.
Now let's talk about Kansas's passing attack here, because we do have Jalen Daniels as well. Is he someone that you really want to look out for here? And what are you projecting him for?
So we like his under. We need completions. I got to get this down pat every week here. 15.8 completions for 206.5 yards. Daniels 2 years ago was maybe one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in football. Hopped on the scene, was incredible for them once they really started turning it around. And then he just has suffered injury after injury, basically didn't play last year. He seems to be more a shell of himself. That's 223's, he's not really a true passer. He doesn't have a receiver one that's going to bail him out like a Ricky White does with Sluka. And so I like the under there at that 223.5. I think that's a really fair number to go under on.
Yeah, and it's an interesting scenario betting one quarterback's over and one quarterback's under here in a game that we anticipate being probably closer to a high-scoring shootout. But just look at the discrepancy in yards here, for crying out loud. That's a 50-yard discrepancy between the two. And if Kansas is out to a lead, UNLV is going to be passing, and Kansas is probably going to be bleeding out the clock and trying to run the football more. So I can definitely see how we're getting to this point when it comes to this game and this game script. Bill M says, "What do you have as completions at?" Yeah, sure, we can go over to the completions market here, and I'll say we got an edge on the completions as well, under 17.5 over at FanDuel, to the tune of a 22% edge here, which obviously, like, that's good. That's something that we're looking to bet. It's not quantified out as an exact 22% edge here, so just bear that in mind. But I like that. We got the chat is crying out for Jacob DeJesus stats here. We got to talk about him real quick.
Yeah, so he's a tough one. He has seemingly had a good connection with Sluka, and he's had some good games. I think he had like a really good long touchdown in week 1 against Houston. Let's see here real quick. 4 for 78 on the season. I would say the hard part with DeJesus is he played a ton last year, but he wasn't really all that impressive. Solid little slot receiver. We don't really know if his role is going to increase this year. So I would probably just avoid it. This is something I mentioned in the alpha chat earlier. Like, some of these games, we're getting a ton of edges. I just don't know if I would spend money and bet on a 3.5% edge. That would feel more like, hey, I just want some juice and have a personal lean, a personal rooting interest. That's not really, to me, like an analytically smart play, based on what we know so far. That could change by week 7 when we see more games for DeJesus and Sluka against real competition. But for right now, that's a little bit of a reach for me.
You know that he's flying over just because that we've talked about it at this point. Now it's
100.
Yeah, so stack the ladder, get your alts in, because now it's going to happen. All right, where do we want to go next here, Chris? Who's next on your slate?
Well, real quick. Let's wrap up Kansas, because I do think you mentioned, right, the game script really makes sense for like over on Sluka, under on Daniels, but it also, like, Kansas wants to run the football. Even Jalen Daniels himself wants to run the football. Like, that's what he's best at. So that's why I do think that under makes a lot of sense for him in passing. And then I think, like, you see, like, Devin Neal's, I think his prop number was in the low 100s at one point. And then if you look at Highshaw, their running back too, they've come out and said basically, we didn't do a good job of getting him usage against in their loss last week. So this is a team that wants to run the football. We have them around 61% passing in this matchup. So we can look at Highshaw. I don't think the numbers are going to pop extremely, but 9.5 attempts for 41.4 yards. So we might see an over here.
BRB wants to ask about Sluka's passing TDs as well. So we're seeing pretty much absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Yeah. This is a situation where if Daniels doesn't run a ton, then Highshaw would be the biggest guy to benefit from it. But the numbers don't seem to like the over, and I think that's completely fair when you look at it that way.
Jalen Daniels' number just dropped a full 10 yards on FanDuel.
Oh my gosh. To go back to your Sluka question, Sluka's best trait is his running. UNLV loves to run the football, and they use 3 to 4 running backs kind of in varying roles. They had a true freshman last year, Jaden Thomas, that had, I think, like 10 rushing touchdowns on like 500 yards. So I don't know if I would go over on a 1.5 passing touchdowns, just because, I would be more inclined to think that he could have 1 or 2 rushing touchdowns rather than 1.5 passing over touchdowns. So that's just not necessarily his full game and what UNLV wants to do. I think I would lean on just the kind of the yardage instead.
Yep, I think that is the way that you want to look at that one there. So to answer your question, BRB and Matt Locklear, thanks for want to give you the shout out because you were the one who spotted the movement there at FanDuel. So I am rushing to place this over at Caesars right now.
Nice. Let's look at when you're there. Let's look at Luke Grimm for Kansas receiving yards.
All right,
because you do see some correlation on all the different receivers. So Luke Grimm, we have at 53.6 yards and 4.2 receptions.
All right.
So all the receivers, I'm fairly positive we like the under on. Luke Grimm they used basically three. It's Grimm, Arnold, and Skinner. Grimm is kind of taking a back seat. I'm sorry, actually Arnold's taking a back seat, but these numbers are too high even for the guy that's going to be the one on the team. If you look actually at the movement on Luke Grimm, it's kind of gone up and down. I want to say so we see the over, it's bumped up to 63.5. That's a little bit aggressive. I think, they're not going to, Jalen Daniels isn't going to throw it 40 times. And he has 3 different targets that he depends on. And Devin Neal is great in the passing game. So I like the under on Grimm. And honestly, I like the under on all 3 of them.
Yeah. Wow. Shout out to Caesars there. By far and away the best line on this number that I'm seeing here at 67.5. Of course, the calculator is telling us the 64.5 at Sports Interactive over here is actually the better price because it's minus 114 as opposed to minus 131. But you are getting that higher yardage total there. And just stay away from BetMGM. They're all the way down to 60.5 on this one.
Yeah, go to look at, I know not a lot of people look at Underdog. That's kind of where I focus. Look at Underdog's number for them because I'm fairly positive it's gone from like 65 to 59 back up to 65 for Grimm, which was really interesting if you have them listed on your prop table here.
So they're not on our prop table because, of course, they're not a gambling site. But yes, let's take a look at Underdog here because we can go to our daily fantasy edge builder here, and we are going to specifically look up Luke Grimm. Underdog has his receptions at 5 and his yardage total at 67.5. Marwell says Grimm moved 6 yards on FanDuel right away. Yeah. There's not even that many of us. Oh, we got 7. Never mind. I take that back. We got 76 people watching right now, guys. Hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. Thank you for being with us here. But yeah, we are moving markets right away here on these.
That's awesome. Yeah, you know what it was? The last one we did that on is we got that to talk about bad beats to start the show was Malik Murphy, the passing one for Duke.
Yeah,
we saw that one drop and just a horrible beat, double overtime to hit the over. Just horrible beat, but hopefully we don't see the same here. But
brutal. You hate that about college football overtime. It can just sink your unders.
25 yards at a time. Let's talk Kansas State.
Let's do it.
They play Arizona tonight. This should be a fun matchup. Let's start with the receiving yards. Why not?
All right.
I'll pull it up. I think the guy specifically in play is maybe Jace Brown and Keegan Johnson. So Jace Brown is going to be 50.9 yards on 3.6 receptions.
Okay, 50.9 on 3.6. And boom, we're seeing a slight edge to the under there.
Slight edge. I think that's moved down from like mid-50s so maybe mid-50s in some areas.
Yeah, he was up at 55 when this line opened. And
the reason being is that Avery Johnson, the quarterback, is horrible at that. Like, that's just a nice way to put it. He's like horrible at passing. He is a true sophomore, extremely dynamic with the legs, but his passing ability leaves a lot to be desired. Keegan Johnson, we have at 28.3 yards and 2.2 receptions. And I think even that one, we may like the under as well. That might have moved a little bit the last 24 hours. Yeah, we see 28.5. We like the under there. There's just not going to be a lot of consistency with how accurate Avery Johnson is. He's like a 50% completion type passer.
That's not good.
No, I think he had 75 or so passing yards at halftime last week against Tulane. So if you want to move over to the passing yards, let's take a look and see if his passing prop is also an under.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's still projected at higher than Matthew Sluka.
Crazy. 18.2 completions. And let's see here. 220 passing yards.
All right, so maybe we're going to see.
Maybe we like an under here, or an over here. That would be a little.
Yeah.
Just talk up
we do like an over here.
Yeah, weird correlation, right? Or lack of correlation because we'd like the under on some of those receivers. I wonder, maybe take a look. Has this number moved at all?
Yeah, let's take a look. I mean, we see 191 there, and FanDuel's already to 197. FanDuel hasn't moved this number at all.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily love this one compared to like the Sluka or Daniels. You know, if there's one thing I would put into action with Avery Johnson is maybe an alt rushing line would be a fun one because he is such a dynamic runner. We have him projected for basically 10 rushing attempts and 46 rushing yards. But remember this Arizona defense gave up, I think it was 15 for $130 to the quarterback for New Mexico, Devin Dampier. So if you can find some fun alternative rushing yard numbers for him, I think that would be a fun one to do because he is such a dynamic runner. And because Arizona has shown in 2 games to not be able to stop the quarterback run so far.
Yeah. How about anything on the Arizona side? Are you more interested in the K-State side or anything else that we're looking at on this one?
I think we technically like some of the unders with like Fafita and Tet McMillan. So let's take a look at Fafita. So we have him for 250.2 passing yards. And let's see here, 19.6 completions.
Yep. Yeah, we're liking an under there. And wow. Don't bet it at MGM because they're 10 yards under the line here at 265. We got FanDuel at 272, and then we got some 270s, 269s hanging around here.
He's a smaller quarterback. He's got an insane weapon in Tet McMillan. Their offense is interesting because he threw to Tet McMillan for like 300 plus yards in week 1, and then week 2 against Northern Arizona, he had 2 for 12 for Tet McMillan. They don't have a lot of secondary options out wide, and their running backs are decent pass catchers. He's a little bit one-dimensional. I like the under here. I don't absolutely love it, but I do like the under here because I trust the numbers and the Vegas total. Kansas State could easily play keep away with how good their run game is. So I do think that one's a little bit more appealing than like a Tet McMillan. He's scary, right? He's maybe the best receiver in college football in terms of NFL prospects, in terms of this next draft. So I think the under on Fafita is way more appealing than McMillan.
All right. Do we want to fire up anyone else in the receiving game or rushing game there, or do we want to move on to another game here?
I think let's move on to another game.
Okay.
Let's look at Washington State.
Let's do it.
I would have loved, this is what we talked about in the past, right? I think our biggest goal here on the prop team is to look at the biggest games of the weekend and do our absolute best to provide projections confidently for those teams. I would love to have the Apple Cup included. We're gonna have Washington released. Mm-hmm. Washington State is just a little bit too sketchy for us to release that confidently. So I figured let's talk about it here on this Friday show. Mm-hmm. So John Mateer is a second or third year quarterback for them. We have him at 214 passing yards and 17.4 completions.
What did I do? I did something.
Maybe hit a tab or something. 17.4 completions.
Yep. I tried using my handy dandy, the numbers pad on the other side here, and it didn't. It just paged up me. All right, 17.4.
Yeah, so we like the over here. He's so far, right? I think if you're watching this, you probably have an idea of what Washington State's done in the past. They're always a pass-happy team. Last year they threw the ball 60% of the time. Mike Leach before that was always passing, right? So we know what they typically like.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, our man Mike Leach. They haven't necessarily shown it. It's only 2 games. It was a blowout and maybe even 2 blowouts, if I remember correctly. So hard to say exactly what they're going to do. And they've also been insanely efficient with some of their different rushing stats. I think this 190 or 189.5 over is a really good play. I think we have them around like 55% passing. So we're not even at that 60% mark. We still like the over here. The Apple Cup always gets a little weird. Maybe it's going to be a little bit different because it's played in September this year, but I think the over on Mateer makes a lot of sense. And he has some different receiver weapons that have shown to be quality so far this year.
Awesome. We love it. As far as like window shopping for it, there's not too many lines out for him just yet, but you do have Caesars at 190 here and Parks at 189 if you want to go that direction, which definitely is the better option here. But hey, Hopefully they drop some more lines for that game before we get started here. Who's next up for you?
Let's take a look at Kentucky. Kentucky has question marks, and they play Georgia, which is never a fun thing for an offense.
Yeah, that's not ideal. Okay, we've got Vandegrift here.
So the reason why we're not releasing them is because there is some kind of indecision in what's going to actually happen at quarterback. Really interestingly, this week we have a ton of different quarterback question marks in terms of guys getting benched or injuries. Like, for example, Peyton Thorne was just announced moving to quarterback 2, and Hank Brown would be starting for Auburn. We kind of thought that might happen, but it was more of like he might get benched in the middle of the game type of thing. Mm-hmm. I think we could see Vandegrift get benched in the middle of the game. So these numbers that I'm about to tell you have him as like 100% usage. So keep that in mind, but 146.8 passing yards and 13.8 completions.
Yeah, you can already tell by the you can already tell by the numbers that they are planning on this guy getting benched.
Yeah, there's very clearly a level of he's maybe not going to finish the game. If for some reason you're a Kentucky fan, you think that he plays the whole game, that 117 is honestly kind of disrespectful if he plays the full game. Yeah. But they're coming off a game where they were just absolutely miserable against South Carolina. So be very weary of this one. I wouldn't. This is just kind of to go to show that there is a lot of different weird things going on with quarterbacks that could impact these numbers. And, hey, there's a 117 or 120. There's clearly something going on. Georgia's an incredible defensive team, but 117 is like Iowa levels of bad 2023, right? So a little bit different.
Some would argue Iowa levels of good. That team was glorious.
I loved that team. You could ask Ben and Glenn like that. Those were the guys I was always trying to do first because they were just kind of predictable, and it was fun to see the ridiculously low outputs for them.
Yeah, it really is. It's just making me hankering for some CFB 25. I think once we're done with work today, Chris, we might have to have a showdown here. But right now, where do you want to go next here? Are we sticking with this Kentucky-Georgia bloodbath, or are we going to head elsewhere on the slate?
Let's switch over a little bit. Another SEC East team, Missouri.
Ooh, we got Mizzou coming in strong here. All right, where are we going with our Missouri Tigers?
We could start with the passing attack. I haven't necessarily looked to see if we like the over or the under on Cook, but we have 264.5. And 20.3 completions. I think it's going to be fairly close. Makes sense. Boston College has looked pretty good so far. No edges here. If you want to go to the receiving yards,
this is where we've got some spots.
I think we do have some spots here with like Theo Weiss and Burden. So 7.1 receptions for Burden at 101.6 yards.
Oh, we're gonna see an over here.
Yeah, wow. So this is part of the reason why we didn't release this is he left last game due to injury.
Okay.
But there was a concern. Was it you remember when Lamar Jackson left the game because he had to use the facilities? There's kind of a thought that like, did he have like an upset stomach? I think they were blowing the other team out. He's looked good, but has had like extremely low usage so far just because of blowout and this injury. Luther Burden, you're not going to get another, like, he will never be in the 60s ever again. If we hear that Luther Burden is healthy, that he's a go, which it seems like he is, this feels like a really strong over. If you play receptions, if there are sites that have receptions or books that have receptions, I've seen that number around like 4.5 or 4. If you do some of the different DFS ones like Sleeper or Underdog. Mm-hmm. So keep those in mind as well, because I think some of those edges are a little bit nicer. Let's look at Theo Weiss real quick, because if Burden does miss, Theo Weiss would be the direct benefit there. 51.6 yards and 4 receptions.
Yeah, we're getting some unders on him, but I guess if you were to look at where Burden matches up again, if he were to be out of the game.
Yeah, this is one of those ones where you kind of you monitor the news during via Unabated. You can see, hey, is Burden going to be in or not? If Burden's in, this Weiss under is a great play. He's just your kind of typical number 2, nothing insane. He'll get bumped up usage as a receiver 1 when that time comes, but it's nothing overly impressive. So a game against Boston College where they're over 2 touchdown favorites, this under to me looks really good and appealing. I would wait till around game time to see what the news impact is, and then bet accordingly.
Mike Zahn says, if you guys have Avery Johnson at 1046 for rushing yards, alt rushing yards not showing much value, over 59.5 plus 145 and 69.5 plus 240 at DK, 74.5 at 280 on 365. I would take us through the prop simulator on this, but he is a quarterback, so the simulator is meant to map out rushing yards for running backs. It doesn't work on quarterbacks.
Yeah, quarterbacks are tricky because of the like we've talked about in the past, right? There's just a level of sacks just throw a wrench in things, and it just makes it nearly impossible to feel good about,
especially in college football where sacks count as negative rush yards.
Yeah, although I will say I had some fun last weekend and did a little bit to NFL side here. I did under 2.5 Kirk Cousins rushing yards. Nice. Never in doubt. It was incredible. No. I don't know how I ever thought to look at that one, but it was never in doubt.
Yeah, those are some of the most fun bets. I know Derek Carty and I talk about those all the time, where you have a guy who's at like 3.5 and we're just saying, look, he's not scrambling.
It's just, I mean, who would have known that Achilles would be that bad? But it ended up being that bad. And so, hey, here we are, and we benefit from it.
Yeah.
I think one final team here that we could look at is North Carolina State. And we could look at receiver or pass yards, I think, are both fine.
All right. Let's start here on NC State. We can start with their receiving yards, and then we'll go to their pass yards here, the Wolfpack.
Yeah. So Casey Concepcion is their true Alpha 1 type, 84.4 yards and 6.4 receptions. This is about as high usage guy as you're going to get. Slight over here. Mm-hmm. So probably obviously stay away at 3.5%. It's not necessarily one to jump at, but if those lines move a little bit lower, it could make sense. Louisiana Tech's not the most threatening of matchups, obviously. So
the Raging Cajuns.
Well, that's ULF. Yeah.
Oh man, my bad.
They're one of the many Bulldogs out there. So I think now let's look at Justin Jolly. My guess is that it's going to be, or Jolie, I should say. My guess is it's going to be similar. So 50.9 yards and 4.1 receptions.
I hope one of my friends isn't watching this. She went to Louisiana Tech. She'd be yelling at me.
She'd be yelling real hard. Yeah. So this is one of those ones. Definitely not an edge anywhere near one. Yeah. Tight ends in college football, it's hard to say. I will say you could look at Jolie down the road. They really wanted to get him involved in that week 1 matchup. I didn't see the game against Tennessee because it just became a blowout so fast. But I wonder if his usage over time increases. Be fun to watch just as a side note. Grayson McCall looked awful, but he has, I think, 4 years of data that backs his performance and production, albeit at Coastal Carolina. 267.8 yards. And total completions would be 20.5.
All right.
So, like I said, he was really good at Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina would beat Louisiana Tech. But it's definitely more similar of a competition than it is like against the Tennessee, right? So if you're concerned about last week's performance against Tennessee, who's really a top 10 or 15 team, at least right now, that's not we're not going to get a similar matchup. So I like this over at the 239.5. Feels definitely a little low with the different options they have in the passing attack, and the fact that their run game is just not all that special. They have a Jordan Waters who's solid, but that's not really their game. They definitely want to throw it a little bit and get it to some of their playmakers in the passing game.
Yeah. And so What are you thinking exactly for this one? Do you think that they're just going to have to air it out more? Are you worried at all about the fact that McCall hasn't looked good so far?
I'm not worried about it due to the matchup.
Mm-hmm.
If we got or if we got maybe one of the higher half of the ACC type matchups, I would probably say, yeah, I would imagine the Vegas line would impact this numbers and it would be lower for our projection. But yeah, I think the matchup is much better for him. If NC State's going to win by double digits, it's going to be because of passing attack. Their success will lie definitely on McCall and on Conception and Jolie and Jordan Waters in the passing game. So, 21-point favorites, it looks like.
Yeah.
They're not going to win by 3 touchdowns because Grayson McCall threw for $170. There's going to be production in the passing game, and he has the talent around him to help supplement him for sure.
Matt Locklear pointing out if LT can keep it somewhat close, that's definitely too low for McCall. Brett Pagney saying the way you guys break all this down is incredible. Hey, Brett, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Now, Chris, have you ever heard of a coach by the name of Sonny Rinkler? There was this guy. Oh man, there's this guy on TikTok. He used to do. He just made this coach who was a very Andy Reid type, and he would narrate all of the game recaps like in character. And he would be taking teams like Middle Tennessee State and building like dynasties with them. This was not in CFB 25. He was still playing the ancient.
This
game.
is like the 14, right?
Yeah, and his quarterback, like he would give everyone like absolutely horrible nicknames, and one of his guys was McCall, and he rhymed that with a part of the anatomy that, of course, matches up there. So yeah.
I think I remember him. Once you said Andy Reid, it definitely made me remember exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, the man, those are some good TikToks. If that guy, Mike Vandy, I think his name was, if that guy's still out there, oh man, shout out to him. All right, do we have another game that we want to check out here? And this is a prop show, but hey, I sees it. I gotta say it. We have something interesting here on Cincinnati and Miami of Ohio. Shout out to my great aunt Linda, rest in peace. But we've got a plus 3.5 at -105 at BetMGM, which is coming in as a nice little edge for you here. You're getting an extra half point on the line here and getting a decent price on Miami of Ohio versus the Bearcats.
That's an interesting line. I would have never guessed it would be around 3.
I know. Like all of a sudden I'm like, wait, they're playing Cincinnati and they're only a 3.5 point dog. That's surprising to me. But hey, you got a slight edge on the main market there. But let's switch back to props here.
It's a big rivalry game.
Yeah.
Miami, Ohio, Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the name. We talk rivalry names, but I don't remember that one.
Yeah.
We have 21 teams being released to later today, so I don't have a ton more teams. So do you want to maybe dip our feet into one more team, one that's being released later? You think that's legal? You think we'll get banned?
I think we could live with that. Also, Natish Nima, shout out. What's up, Natish? Hope you're doing well. He wants to know, what are our thoughts on the Purdue Notre Dame spread? Because it started at 13, now it's at 10. Yeah, sure. Why not? We're a pop show, but we can check out some spreads here.
Yeah, so my guess is it moved because of the Riley Leonard information. With him having a banged up shoulder. Now there's a lot of indecision about is he going to play? Is he going to be effective? Riley Leonard's best attribute is like Sluka. It's him running the football, and shoulders. Those types of injuries are impactful for running quarterbacks because obviously you take a hit, they're gonna get you in the shoulder. So I would imagine that's why it moved. I mean, it's down to looks like 7.5 in some spots.
Yeah, bookmakers got 7. I mean, at this point, just off what bookmaker and Sport Trade have here, I almost want to take a shot at a +8 or a +9 if I can get one.
Yeah, Purdue, they're one of the rare teams that's already had a bye week. They had a bye week last week, so 2 weeks to prepare for Notre Dame. We just saw Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame, and now we get Purdue at home. Purdue looked really good, albeit Indiana State in week 1. They have a veteran quarterback, veteran running back, solid receiver group, no standouts. And I got a tight end we really like that there may be an edge tonight/tomorrow on. So be on the lookout for that. And Max Clare. So I think their offense could do it. It's just a matter of what's the deal with Notre Dame? Are they going to be effective with Leonard being hurt or if there's a backup in play?
Oh, Bill M got an 11.5 in his pocket. Hashtag Shrap. Good work there. Colin Sherwin pointing out Miami and Cincinnati play for the Victory Bell.
The Victory Bell. There we go. I would have never guessed that, but thanks, Colin.
I mean, that is not a Pokemon that you're keeping in your squad there. Let's be real.
It is not. No, that's one of those fun ones, though, that you remember because you played college football 2014.
Yeah.
Because why else would you know rivalry trophies like that? But I do remember it from back then, but couldn't remember the name.
Yeah. All right. Chris, what do you think? I mean, here's the deal. We could do a little sneak peek of something that's going to release here. But if we're going to do that, I think we need something in return. We're at 895 subscribers. Can we get up to 900 in the next couple minutes here? If we can do that, I think we should dip into one of these teams that we might have. So everybody hit that subscribe button. Let's get 5 more subscribers here. And Chris, what game do you think we should go to? Let's tee them up here.
I want to say College Game Day is at LSU, South Carolina, right? Let's look at LSU.
All right.
People are in. We can look at LSU.
Yeah. All right. Giving you the game breakdown, the game background right here. We've got LSU versus South Carolina. We got a 6.5 point spread right now. We've got an unabated line of 6.5 as well. We're already up to 898 subscribers. We're going to cross that number. We did it. 902. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. As Nick Modlin says, I want someone to look at me like Chris looks at backup tight end props. Oh, those are my favorite. Those are my favorite Chris specials here. All right. We have crossed our threshold. We are up past 900 subscribers. Let's take a look in the props market here for LSU tonight. Where do you want to go, Chris?
Let's look at receivers. Actually, let's look at running backs.
We've neglected running backs.
Their lives matter too.
But they do.
Yeah. So this is a really interesting situation. Full context of LSU's offense, right? They go from Jaden Daniels, the dual threat Heisman Trophy winner, to Garrett Nussmeier, who I'm a huge fan of, but he's strictly a thrower. He might run it twice tomorrow type thing. And so this is a team that's going to, so far, has passed a ton. You thought, hey, maybe they might be more of an even offense using running backs. That's not really been the case against USC. We saw them use 3 or 4 guys, not all that effective. Their best running back was John Emery, who tore his ACL. Ooh. So the only guys remaining are Caleb Jackson and Josh Williams. Caleb Jackson, big recruit that should have we considered to be the RB1. But he just hasn't been effective. Whereas Josh Williams is that like super old type that has just been around a while. He was on that team with Joe Burrow. That's how long he's been in college football.
Wow.
So I think if there lines for Josh Williams, there were lines earlier. Is there anything popping up right now for him?
Unfortunately, oh man, we just made that show, Chris. We can't not give out something, but there are no lines available for either one of these running backs.
Let's go receivers then, because the context of the situation is their run game is awful. They're going to pass a ton, and we don't have them pass heavy as much as they've been. So Kyron Lacey is their true number 1. We have him for 11 targets, just as a heads up, but the yardage, 96.5 yards. And we have him at 6.6 receptions.
Matthew G saying running backs available on Builder. Josh Williams at 43.5 at Bet Online, and Bet365 has him at 44.5.
We have both, just because we couldn't give the actual data out there. We have both those running backs around mid to high 30s in terms of rush yards. And if I'm going to pick one that's going to be the RB1, it would be Caleb Jackson. So that Josh Williams under, if it does pop up on different books that are available to you guys, that to me is a really solid under, that Josh Williams in the mid 40s.
All right. How about Kyron Lacey here? We're seeing a solid over.
I mean, he's been incredible. He had like 5 catches the first half against USC. Then they just didn't throw to him, which was super odd. And then they ended up losing for it, right? Their offense kind of sputtered. He is their true number 1. He's going to see a ton of targets. And we have him at 96.5. And some of these numbers are low 70s. So I really like the matchup here for him. And this is, like I said, we don't even have it as pass happy as they've shown to be. I could see them throw it 40 plus times to 20 runs. And I want to say we have them closer to, I can't figure it out at the top of my head. Let's see, 25 runs to something like 40 passes. So we're a little bit low on the passing attempts. So a big fan of the over of Kyron Lacey.
All right. And we like the under on Josh Williams at that 44.5 number that Bet365 has. Bet Online probably also pretty decent there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much. We have over 80 people watching in the chat right now. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe, turn on the notifications, all that deal. If you had notifications on, you managed to get one of Jack's premium live streams today for free because he forgot to make that one unlisted for everybody. So everybody got it. Hope you enjoyed that. You can still go back and look at it if you want to. But see, this is why you want to have those notifications on. So you know every time we're going live here, don't forget to smash that like button, smash that notification button. Thank you so much for being with us here. As always, ladies and gentlemen, we really do appreciate it. If you're sticking around in a couple minutes here, just head on back to the channel. And then the next live video that's going to be going up in about 15 minutes here is going to be me with Derek Carty talking some NFL props for week 2 of the NFL season here as well. But for now, Chris, I think that is about going to do it for us. What do you think?
I think that's it. We got a ton of games being released later for those that are subscribers.
Yeah.
Should be a ton of action, tons of edges. Please, friendly reminder, I say this every week because it's CFB is such a different beast. Edges are different in college football. Look for 5% and higher. That's where you want to live. Some of those 0 to 5% can be super volatile, and it's just kind of a crazy world. There's just so many players that get put out that there's no reason to worry about a 3% edge. But it should be a lot of fun, great games, great action, and hope everybody does well. Hit me up in Discord if you have questions.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. I'm getting ready to make my weekly trek to Arizona so that I can grab some lines and get down and be ready for both Saturday and Sunday here. But for everyone else, thank you guys so much for being with us. We will see you next week, same time, same place, right here. It has been a pleasure as always. Remember, like, subscribe, and share. And of course, best of luck. And let's cash some tickets. I'll see you in just a couple minutes here with Derek Carty to talk some NFL.